Welcome to the P.A.S. Report Weekly Roundup Podcast. The P.A.S. Report provides an honest analysis on the critical issues that matter to you without the biased media filters. Here's your host, Professor Nick Giordano.
Welcome back, America. We're going to stay on this topic of anti-Semitism and intolerance on college campuses. Our next guest was sounding the siren long before most of us awakened to all of this extraordinary hate, intolerance, and censorship and anti-Semitism was growing on our campuses. Nick Giordano is a political science professor and a higher education fellow with Campus Reform, and he has been one of the most important voices in describing to America what's been going on our college campuses. He joins us right now. Nick, great to have you back on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You were warning of this moment a long time before a lot of us awakened to it. I think most parents now, particularly since October 7th, like, my God, what was going on at Harvard and UPenn? But you saw this coming for a long time. Is there a moment now of reflection on these campuses? Do you think some of the academia, some of the academic leadership realize that they have overplayed their hands?
I don't think they've come to that realization yet, but they soon will, because I do believe the reckoning has happened in higher education, and it's only going to get worse for them. When we look at college administrators, I mean, obviously ideology is heavily pushed throughout the college campuses, and the truth is that while I do believe some of the administrators should step down or be removed, it's not really going to change the toxic environment they've created, because there's a long line of administrators waiting in the wings that have been corrupted by this groupthink mentality that has been prevalent on college campuses. And I'm on the front lines watching as my profession is destroying itself. I mean, if you just look at the rabid anti-Americanism, the anti-Semitism that's going on, calls for genocide, these are the same universities that have created free speech zones on college campuses, put trigger warnings on the American flag. If you misgender someone, you could be in the administrative crosshairs and face disciplinary hearings. It really is stunning, but people are waking up to what's going on. And unfortunately for these colleges, they did it to themselves. They need to realize that an academic institution should be about knowledge, learning, and instilling the idea of critical thinking, merit, and hard work. They've done the exact opposite. They've pushed ideology, a political agenda to indoctrinate students, to create an army of student activists. And now donors are starting to realize, so they're pulling back. You have companies, a new survey just came out, where over 50% of American corporations stated that in 2024, they are doing away with four-year degree requirements. Parents are reconsidering where they're going to be sending their children for the university. And so I think this is a real wake-up call to the universities. You better reform quick, or the higher education landscape is going to be radically altered in the next 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, there's nothing like losing your funding stream, your customer stream, and your donor stream to wake you up to that. You have done a lot of thinking. In fact, of all the people that I've had the blessing to interview on this, I think you've done the most thinking for the longest period of time on how to fix this. And I want to walk through some of the ideas that I think you've been developing. Let's start with the role that donors can continue to play. Obviously, there were some shock battles applied to Harvard and some of the other universities, UPenn, big, large donations pulled. But there still seems to be a role for the benefactors of universities to continue the pressure and not stop, not make this a moment, but make this a movement.
Well, when it comes to the donor movement, so over the short term, a lot of the Ivy League institutions, they're not going to feel much pain because they have billions of dollars in endowments funds that they could resort to. However, over the long term, the more donors that pull out, the more it's going to hurt these universities over the course of the long term. They're going to have to start thinking about cutting the amenities. And that's where a lot of the tuition cost goes, to the amenities. They're going to have to start cutting amenities. They're going to have to start cutting programs. If they don't have the donor class, well, that severely cripples the institution's ability to operate. And from what I'm hearing, all the departments that deal with the gifts that the universities receive, they're struggling. You know, they're trying to get some of the major donors on the phones, and the donors aren't even taking their calls.
Wow.
So it goes to show you that the donor class is very upset, and they should have been upset a long time ago, right? It shouldn't have resorted to the Hamas terror attacks and the anti-Semitism we're seeing. It should have been the anti-Americanism that we've been witnessing over the course of 2 decades.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. They're slow to the table, but they are at the table right now, which is interesting. Now, let me ask you about...
Better late than never.
Yeah, exactly. Let me ask you about another funding stream. The federal government is probably one of the largest dispatchers of money to universities. A lot of the research grants are now in the billions of dollars per year. Can Congress have an impact by tying future federal funds to the ability to keep free speech free, to fight anti-Semitism, put requirements on some of this money so that it's not just a free giveaway every budget cycle?
Absolutely. Congress plays a tremendous role. They control the purse strings. And I've been arguing for a long time that any university that violates our fundamental rights, the freedom of speech, the freedom to protest, and any university that engages with the federal government to build out a censorship apparatus should see their funding cut, and Congress should be proactive in this. Our own tax dollars shouldn't be used to silence Americans, and our own tax dollars shouldn't be used to promote hatred towards America. And that's exactly what the DEI industrial complex has done. They've created an entire system that's built on this idea of victimhood, where we're going to label people oppressors versus oppressed. We're going to put everyone into these tribes and let the tribes pit against each other and battle it out. A tribal society fails. We see that around the world. And I think Congress needs to take a long look at the funding stream that they provide to both private universities and public universities, because it's about time that the funds get cut. You know, Eisenhower warned that the higher education system is going to be corrupted through the federal funding mechanism. And so now maybe it's time we think about weaning these colleges and universities off the tax dollars when they're promoting the nonsense that we're seeing today.
Yeah, it's such a common sense idea, and yet it has been kicked down the line so often. Yeah, I mean, it is remarkable that it hasn't been a string that was pulled out sooner than this moment now. I want to turn to one other idea. It's obvious that the tenure that faculty sometimes enjoy have given them certain protections that they feel comfortable using their classrooms, not to teach anymore, but to indoctrinate. Is there room to create a surveillance system? Now, again, we don't want to be truly policing speech, but is there room for a surveillance system where real egregious violations of classroom indoctrination can get reported and then there'd be a disciplinary process? Is that something that's missing from either the nonprofit or the professional realm of education right now?
Well, what we're witnessing, professors have the idea of academic freedom. We get to delve into controversial topics. We're protected through academic freedom. However, we see academic freedom being applied differently depending on the professor and what they say. So, for instance, at Campus Reform, we reported on how a USC professor was suspended for calling Hamas a terrorist organization, saying that they're murderers and that they should be killed. Well, they were suspended, but other professors calling for a genocide have escaped without any type of academic disciplinary against them. So we see the double standard that's applied depending on what you're saying and what side of the political spectrum you may fall on. So there is room. I mean, when professors are overtly calling for a genocide against a group of people, well, they really shouldn't be in the classroom indoctrinating student bodies. And we see it's not... The education system's broken completely from kindergarten through college, and we see the ability to think critically doesn't exist. A recent poll just came out where 51% of those 18 to 24 said that Israel shouldn't exist. Yet in the same poll, 69% said that Israel had a right to exist. So you see that the students aren't even thinking about what they're saying, and it's a real problem.
Yep. That's the loss of great training. We stopped educating our students. Nick, you're always on the front lines in this. We are so grateful. Thank you for your time today, my friend. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Amanda will be rejoining me after these commercial messages.
When things go sideways, you want to be prepared. Protect you and your family. And people are concerned. They might have to go for a long time without food, electricity. That's why I want to introduce you to 4patriots.com. Get preparedness products you could use now, and that could save your life later. My favorite is 4Patriots' new solar generator, the Patriot Power Generator 2000X. It uses the endless free power of the sun to power your lights, your TV, medical equipment, even run your fridge. Plus, it's expandable and comes with a free solar panel. Or you can pick up one of 4Patriots' best-selling survival food kits. Delicious taste tasting and designed to last for 25 years. They even have kits with real meat. And if the power's out, no worries. Just boil water over a fire, simmer, and serve. You're going to enjoy a hot meal and stay safe in a crisis. More smart people than ever are finding 4Patriots. Over 2 million customers trust them, and you might have even seen them on TV. I had the folks at 4Patriots set up a special page for you at 4patriots.com/PAS so that listeners of this podcast can see this week's discounts and deals before they go away. Go to 4patriots.com/PAS, but you gotta hurry because the deals don't last long. So save more money, get peace of mind, and protect you and your family. Go to 4patriots.com/PAS.
Today's News Talk Radio.
Come on, let the man talk.
We never censor our hosts.
Good. Now, talk.
Uncensored news.
Today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
All right, folks, welcome back. Steve Malzberg with you, and I'm very happy to welcome in, as I promised, Nick Giordano, professor, political science professor, of course, and the host of the P.A.S. report. And Professor, I welcome you back. Could things be more loony and insane than they are right now? What was your reaction when you heard the decision by the Colorado State Supreme Court?
Well, it's one of those reactions where I keep on hearing the left and the media, Democrats, never Trumpers regurgitate threats to democracy as they're destroying democracy. That's what was going through my head. I mean, this is a stunning move. Basically, the Supreme Court of Colorado telling the American people and the residents of Colorado that they don't get the chance to decide what candidate they want. It's going to be the bureaucrats that sit on the bench that's going to decide who can run for president and who can. It really is stunning that we're seeing this over the course of our 230 plus year history, that they want to undo the foundation of the United States, all because they despise one man so much. And when we look at it, you got the civil lawsuit trying to bankrupt him and take his businesses away from him. You got the 4 criminal indictments, and now you got this. So they're throwing everything they can, and make no mistake about it. All this is happening because the polls show that Donald Trump has now come into the lead. That's why it's happening. If it showed that Donald Trump was down 20, 30 points from Biden, they wouldn't be doing this to him. But they don't want to take the chance. They don't trust the American people. They show disdain for the American people. And so the guardians of democracy will destroy democracy and then rebuild it in what they believe democracy is, which is submission.
But, okay, so how does that work exactly? Because other courts have said, I mean, over 10, I think, have said, no, no, we're not going to throw them off the ballot. This doesn't work. And 3 of the 4 Democrats on that court in Colorado said, no, we're not going to do it. But these 4 said, yes. Do they get pressured? Do they get phone calls? Do you believe? Of course, we don't know.
No, they put a poison pill in this. So if you look, I believe it's on page 7 or page 8 of the order. If you look, they put a poison pill where, they say that this is going to be appealed to the Supreme Court. So we're going to stay the order until January 4th. The Secretary of State has to certify that what ballot's going out on January 5th. And so if President Trump's team puts in an appeal, which they're definitely going to do to the Supreme Court, they already announced they're going to do it, then if you actually read the order, it states, well, then the Secretary of State will make the ballot go through on January 5th, and Trump's name will be on it, and that's the way it's going to be. So they put a poison pill in it, and it doesn't matter, because I do believe the Supreme Court is going to overturn this decision. I believe it will be a unanimous decision with the Supreme Court. But it's just the fact that even the attempt to do this undermines the entire system.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And you would think, because this can be done to Democrats as well. I mean, if this were to hold, what's good for one is good for the other, and with a Supreme Court that's conservative, I mean, if they see something happening to one, they might let it happen to another. I don't know. I'm just saying, you would think that the President of the United States, when he was asked about this today, would have had a different answer. I want to play that again for you. We played it earlier. This is 251.
Certainly you're self-evident. You saw it all. Now, whether the 14th Amendment applies, I'll let the court make that decision. But he certainly supported an insurrection. And no question about it. None. Zero. And he seems to be doubling down on about everything.
Anyway, what do you think of his answer?
Well, I look at it, it's disgraceful. I mean, as president of the United States, this is the president that talked about unity, but it's anything but unity. The reality is, the idea that this was an insurrection is actually laughable. First of all, it was a riot. I think most people will acknowledge that, but not a single person. So I think there have been, 800 arrests, 900 arrests, maybe even more, might be over 1,000 at this point. Not a single one has been charged with insurrection. So here you have 4 judges stating that we're going to label it an insurrection, even though not a single person has been charged with an insurrection, including President Trump himself through the Jack Smith special counsel. So the whole thing is ridiculous. And you said something that's important before. You said, the Democrats, how short-sighted are they that they don't see that this could be turned against them? Because Republicans are already talking about, well, if you do it to our candidate, we're going to start doing it to your candidate. They didn't learn their lesson after Harry Reid, the Senate Majority Leader, got rid of the filibuster for judges. Harry Reid was very short-sighted. He didn't realize that whatever one party does when they're in power, the other party is going to do it once they get into power, and they may push it the envelope even further. So this is a very dangerous road. But remember, these guardians of democracy, the self-anointed guardians of democracy, they're the ones that are pushing us to authoritarianism. And it's clear. Just look at all their actions, whether it's spying on the American people, whether it's trying to silence and censor the American people, throughout the COVID restrictions, telling people that they have to stay in their homes, kids can't go to schools, what businesses are essential, which ones aren't. You have the President of the United States telling the American people his patience is wearing thin with them, and he declares nearly half the country the biggest threat to the republic since our founding. I mean, so you see where this is going, and it's a very dangerous road. I don't know how many people are students of history, but when you're a student of history, people don't realize that free countries could devolve into authoritarian societies fairly quickly. It only takes a couple of years. It takes much longer for an authoritarian society to become a free society once again.
Yeah, we're talking to Professor Nick Giordano here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Let's talk about insurrection. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I don't usually quote, nonetheless, she said that she wants the activists who staged a protest inside the Capitol on Tuesday to be sent to what she called the gulag for taking part in an insurrection. We had 60 people calling for a ceasefire in the Israeli-Palestinian war. They were arrested for illegally protesting inside the Capitol Rotunda on Tuesday, and they entered the building as tourists and underwent a normal security screening before the protest began. So they came in under false pretenses and then launched into an organized protest in the Capitol Rotunda. Now, you've had people of all the ones you mentioned that were arrested and none charged with insurrection, people who, I mean, some of them deserve to be arrested, obviously, but some, from what I understand, just walked in the open door. I mean, just walked in, didn't do anything.
Some didn't even walk in. They were just standing on the lawn and they got the trespassing arrest.
Right. And they got arrested. So what should happen? So if that was an insurrection, was this an insurrection by the Palestinian supporters yesterday at the Capitol?
Well, Democrats are the ones that control the narrative. So they're going to say, no, that's not an insurrection. That's peaceful protest. But I mean, remember, these are the same people that were screaming fiery but peaceful protests throughout the summer of love in 2020, when cities were burning down, police stations were being taken over. I mean, the hypocrisy knows no bounds. And again, I'll go back to these 4 judges. There was no due process. They didn't have a trial. They didn't take any testimonies. There was no cross-examination. It was, okay, we're going to take information that the January 6th committee pumped out, and we're going to use that as the basis for our decision. Well, that's not the way the justices are supposed to work. That's not the way the rule of law is supposed to work. You're supposed to hear evidence. You're supposed to have cross-examinations. You're supposed to ask questions. And you're supposed to determine whether or not it falls within the Constitution. The idea that the president took part in an insurrection where it said that his words in the speech he gave, where he said, peacefully and patriotic, walk down to the Capitol building. They said his words aren't protected by free speech and that he incited an insurrection. That's downright dangerous, because I could take anyone's words out of context. What about Maxine Waters when she told people to get in Republicans' faces and give them help?
Absolutely.
What about Nancy Pelosi when she declared Republicans in Congress as the enemies within? I could easily.
Chuck Schumer, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh.
You're going to pay a price.
To pay a price, and of course they're not elected. So what price could they pay? They're not going to be voted out of office. So what the hell was he talking about if not violence? Yeah, look, and Cory Booker on TV says his testosterone makes him want, when Trump was president, makes me want to punch the president in the face. And Joe Biden, when he was running, I want to take him out behind the shed and beat the crap out of him. I mean, it's okay when it works one way, but the other way. And speaking of that, let me ask you about this. That Senate staffer, the staffer who worked for Ben Cardin, the Democrat from Maryland, who filmed himself having gay sex very explicitly in the Senate chambers, empty, of course, as far as we know, with whoever he was having sex with. That's not even a news story. The networks didn't touch it. Can you freaking imagine for 1 minute if it was any Republican senator who had a staffer who did something like that or something less? It would be page 1, but they didn't touch it.
The Republican would have to step down, even though it wasn't him having the sex. He would have to step down. That's how much the coverage would start to beat the Republicans over the head with it. It is truly amazing. I mean, first of all, it was disgraceful. It's disgusting. It's an embarrassment to our country that took place, that the people that work in the United States Senate office believe that they could go and do something like that, to have anal sex in the Senate. It really speaks volumes about how debased our culture has become. That's what I think it does. It shows that we are on a decline. And unfortunately, we're seeing the decline of the great United States and it's all self-inflicted wounds. No other entity, none of our adversaries need to do anything. We're doing a good job at destroying ourselves by actions like this, by, taking away our freedoms, slowly eroding them over a period of time, by ushering in this period of authoritarianism. We're doing a really good job of destroying ourselves. So we're doing our adversaries' work for them. They want to scream about Russia and China. No, we need to be screaming about the officials that are in charge now.
I got one more for you. I want you to listen. This is being called like the worst political answer ever. This was Channel 11 in New York, WPIX, and they're interviewing Mayor Eric Adams. who once called Yankee Stadium, I think it was opening day this year, he was on the Yankee Yes Network, and he referred to Yankee Stadium as Yankee Field or Yankee Park, which is like, you've got to be from Mars. And this guy's a lifelong New Yorker who was a cop, so that blew my mind away. But here he is, and you listen to this. This is cut 263.
When you look at the totality of the year, if you had to describe it, and it's tough to do, in one word, what would that word be, and tell me why?
New York. This is a place where every day you wake up, you could experience everything from a plane crashing into our trade center to a person who's celebrating a new business that's open. This is a very, very complicated city, and that's why it's the greatest city on the globe.
Mm-hmm.
Why on earth would he bring up 9/11 when talking about what you might find in New York City?
I just want to know after that interview if he's like, wow, I really wish I could take that one back. I mean, like the words just left him. Listen, I'll say this. We all misspeak at times, especially when you're speaking in public quite often. You're always going to misspeak. But I don't know how that even comes into your head. I just don't. Like when I'm thinking about New York and what makes New York such an interesting place, I'm not going to be like, oh, planes crashing into buildings and, and businesses opening. Like they just, it was just bizarre to say the least. I think he has bigger problems than that misstatement he made, especially with the FBI investigating him and everything. But yeah, that was something that was like, wow. Talk about not being able to take something back. Oh, cringeworthy.
It was crazy. All right, so tell people where they could and when and how they could watch the PAS report, the PAS podcast.
Everyone go to PASreport.com. You click on any of the episodes there. Go to your favorite podcast platform from there. Some episodes on YouTube and Rumble. PASreport.com, or follow me anywhere at PAS Report.
Nick Giordano, have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I look forward to speaking with you again, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Same to you.
Thank you for listening to the PAS Report Weekly Roundup Podcast.
Have a good one. Bye.
Be sure to rate, share, and subscribe to the podcast so you'll never miss an episode. Also, visit PASreport.com and follow us on Twitter at PAS Report.